It's 3 in the morning, and the pain has a heartbeat. A single tooth, deep in the back of your jaw, is throbbing in time with your pulse. Hot, then hotter. You hold cold water in your mouth until it goes warm, then spit and do it again. There is no pill in the cabinet. There is no dentist to call. There is no morning appointment that will make this stop. There is just you, the dark, and the ache. For days, sometimes for years. This is most of human history. And here's the strange part. For nearly 5,000 years, people who felt exactly what you're feeling right now believed the cause was a worm. A tiny living thing curled inside the tooth, gnawing the root, eating them slowly from the inside. The real story of how people survived their own teeth is stranger and gentler and sadder than you'd think. So let's wander into it. The worm shows up almost as soon as writing does. Picture a clay tablet, baked hard, older than the pyramids. It comes from ancient Mesopotamia, and on it, someone has scratched a little poem about a worm. In the story, the worm goes before the gods and asks what it will be given to eat. Not figs, not soft, ripe fruit. No, the worm asks to live between the teeth and the gums, to drink the blood of the gum and gnaw the roots of the tooth from the inside. That's the whole explanation. The pain you feel is a worm feeding. And here's what's genuinely astonishing. That idea did not stay in Mesopotamia. The toothworm turns up in ancient Egypt, in India, in China, in the writings of Rome, and it travels right on into medieval Europe. People drew it. People swore they had seen it pulled out. In languages that never met, in empires that never overlapped, humans looked at a rotting tooth and reached the same quiet conclusion. There's something alive in there. Now, it's easy to laugh at that, but sit with it for a second. You have no microscope. You've never heard the word bacteria. What you do know is that the pain feels alive. It moves, it pulses, it bores. And when a tooth finally rots all the way through, the soft pulp inside goes dark and stringy. If you've ever bitten into a worm-eaten apple, you know exactly what that looks like. So the worm wasn't stupidity. It was a story that fit the evidence people actually had. It gave a shapeless agony a shape. And here's the thing, a pain you can name, a pain with a cause, even the wrong cause, is somehow easier to bear than a pain that means nothing at all. That's the quiet thread running through this whole story. Almost everything people did about a toothache was less about curing it and more about making it survivable. So how do you survive a worm in your tooth? You reach for whatever the world around you offers. You press crushed cloves against the tooth, and that one, it turns out, was genuinely clever, because clove oil really does contain a natural compound that numbs the nerve. People had no idea why it worked. They'd just found something real, and we still taste its cousin in dental products today. You chew bitter herbs. You hold opium against the gum, if you're lucky or wealthy or desperate enough. Because if you can't fix the tooth, you can at least try to leave the body that's feeling it for a few blurry hours. And then there was the smoke. One old treatment was to heat henbane seeds and breathe the fumes over the aching tooth, and little white threads would appear, which everyone agreed, with relief, were the worms driven out at last. They weren't worms, they were just fibers from the seeds. But imagine the comfort of finally watching the enemy crawl out. When the herbs failed, and they usually did, you reached past medicine entirely. You wore charms. You whispered set phrases over the tooth, little spoken spells handed down to drive the worm out. And you prayed. And in much of Europe, you prayed to one specific person. Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of toothache. The story goes that she was an early Christian woman whose teeth were shattered, one by one, during her martyrdom. So ever after, she became the one you called on when your own teeth turned against you. It's easy to smile at this, but here's the strange part. When you are in real pain, and every remedy has failed, and no help is coming, prayer is not foolish. It is the most human thing there is. A whole civilization of people, lying awake, hurting, with nothing left to try but the ceiling, and a quiet word to the one saint they believed understood exactly how it felt. But sometimes the herbs don't work, the prayers don't work, and the tooth simply has to come out. And here is where the story leaves the dark bedroom and walks out into the town square. Because for most of history, there were no dentists. There were tooth pullers, travelling showman who set up in the market on fair day, often the same barber surgeon who'd cut your hair and bleed you for a fever. He'd wear bright clothes. Sometimes he'd wear a necklace of the teeth he'd already pulled as proof of his skill. He'd gather a crowd, and here's the detail that tells you everything. He often brought a drummer, or a man with a horn, some music, loud and fast, playing at the exact moment of the pull. The music wasn't celebration. When the iron clamped down and wrenched, you would scream, and the drum got loud, precisely so the next nervous soul in the crowd wouldn't hear what was coming and run. And the tools. I almost don't want to describe them, but you should know. There was an instrument called the dental pelican, named because its hooked iron beak looked like a pelican's bill. You hooked it around the tooth and levered, rolling the tooth sideways out of the jaw. It worked. It also tore the gum and snapped the neighboring teeth along the way. Then came the tooth key. It looked exactly like a key you'd put in a door. You'd seat its claw over the tooth, turn the handle, and rotate the tooth straight out of the jaw, like turning a key in a lock. It was faster. It also shattered teeth and cracked jawbones whenever it slipped. And remember, no anesthetic. None. The patient is fully awake, held down by friends or strangers, while a man in the open air twists a piece of iron inside their head and a band plays to cover the sound. For most people, for most of history, this was the cure. This was the good outcome, the version where you lived. Because here's the part we forget, safe in our world of antibiotics. A toothache could kill you. An infection in a tooth doesn't always stay in the tooth. It can spread into the jaw, into the soft tissue of the face and neck, even toward the blood and the brain. And there were no antibiotics, not until the 20th century. An abscess that today is a quick course of pills could, back then, quietly turn deadly. There are records, right up into modern times, of people dying from what began as a single bad tooth. So when someone climbed onto that stage and let a stranger wrench a tooth out of their head in front of a jeering crowd, that wasn't recklessness. It was a gamble against something that might otherwise poison them in the dark. The agony in the square was simply the price of staying alive. And here's the surprise that turns the whole story on its head. Because I don't want to leave you thinking our ancestors were only helpless. Go back 9,000 years to a Stone Age village, and archaeologists have found human teeth with neat little holes drilled into them. Drilled, with a tiny flint bit, spun fast, almost certainly to clean out the decay. 9,000 years ago, before metal, before writing, someone sat another person down and drilled into a living tooth, on purpose, to treat it. Then go to the Etruscans in ancient Italy, more than 2,500 years ago, and you find something that stops you cold. Dental bridges made of gold. Delicate bands holding replacement teeth in place, anchored to the real ones, custom fitted to the mouth. We didn't reliably match that craft again for centuries. So the same species that blamed a worm was also drilling teeth in the Stone Age and fitting gold bridgework before Rome was even an empire. Both of those are true at once. That's people for you. So what finally killed the worm? Not a single dramatic moment, just a slow turning on of the lights. In the 1700s, a French surgeon named Pierre Fauchard, often called the father of modern dentistry, looked closely at decayed teeth and said plainly, he had never once found a worm. The new lenses were beginning to reveal a world far too small to be a worm at all. And bit by bit, over the next century, the real culprit came into focus. Not a creature gnawing the roots, but acid and bacteria, an invisible city of living things quietly dissolving the tooth from the surface in. But sit with the timeline for a moment. The worm was born in clay 4,000 years before that, and it didn't fully die until well into the age of science. It outlasted the Babylonians, the Pharaohs, the Roman Empire, and the whole medieval world. The empires fell. The worm just crawled on. And here's what stays with me about all of it. For almost the entire human story, a toothache was simply something you endured. There was no off switch, and the fear of it shaped far more than you'd think. It shaped the medicine people invented, the saints they prayed to, the myths they whispered to their children, and that strange, loud little theatre that played out in the town square on market day. One small tooth could send you to a saint, to a stranger with a drum, or to an early grave. The fear of the toothache built whole worlds. And that little worm, that wrong, strange, oddly comforting little worm, outlasted kings and empires and lived in the human imagination longer than almost any true thing we have ever believed. So the next time a tooth of yours twinges and you sigh and reach, half asleep, for something that will actually make it stop, hold that thought for just a second. For almost everyone who ever lived, that same small pain had no off switch. They lay in the same dark, with the same ache, and endured it with cloves and prayers and a stranger's iron tools, while a drummer played to hide the screams. And they believed, for 5,000 years, in a little worm that lived inside the tooth. The numbing shot, the quiet room, the pill that truly works. Every one of those is a small miracle almost no human who ever lived got to have. That's the tender, funny thing about being human. We will build whole worlds of meaning around our smallest pains just to make them bearable. If you like wandering into strange old corners of the world like this one, stay a while. Subscribe to Whymsy and we'll go somewhere quietly stranger next time. Sleep well. Mind your teeth.